Everyone. All right, good morning. So first I want to start off with going over the chart a little bit, and then going into our main lesson, which is on polyphonic and monophonic music. Let's start by going over the chart. So if we go over with the medieval period, which really starts, as I said earlier, about 500 to 1400. You have monophonic single melodic line. Um, it doesn't mean that there's only one person. It could be if there's only one person singing or playing an instrument, playing the melody. That means that it is monophonic. But monophonic also means that it could be multiple people, but they're all singing in unison or the same, the same pitch or the same note. So if they are singing in octaves or basically octaves or in unison. So a main characteristic of that was, of course, the Gregorian chants and sacred music. Church music was, a lot of ceremonial kind of things. The three main composers of the medieval ages was Hildegard of Bingen, Leonin, and Perotin. Those are the main three. I did not give you any examples. I'm sure you can, find them if you would like. Renaissance. This is when the use of modes, and it kind of starts in the 1300s, maybe a little earlier. But modes come into play. Remember that a mode is starting on a different note, but it is the same scale. And then in the 1400s, really kind of in the late medieval, early Renaissance, that's when polyphonic music, when you have two or more melodic lines. So it is not harmony that becomes later, but polyphonic means two or more melodies, two or more independent melodies. So that's when you have more instrumental music, when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 different instruments, and they're all playing different melodies, and they work together. So we have William Byrd, Giovanni Gabrieli, and Claudio Monteverdi. Monteverdi lived in the late Renaissance and early Baroque periods. You can see that I said early and later. Baroque period, 1600 to 1750. Complex melodies, tonal music becomes standard, which means that now we have different keys, different key signatures. The harpsichord and the clavichord. Harpsichord, was both of them were invented. I think clavichord actually was towards the late medieval period and throughout the Renaissance and into the Baroque and even into a little bit classical. Harpsichord, same thing, was kind of invented in the Renaissance period and it was very widely used during the Baroque period. So again, we have later Monteverdi, Vivaldi, George Handel, Johann Sebastian Bach is probably the most popular. George Philip Telemann, Henry Purcell. There's a lot of composers. I think we'll do about 6 for each period. Classical. This is when harmony really starts to become a major player. There's emphasis on balance, on beauty, and elegant melodies. It's maybe not as complex as Baroque, but it is not. It is not simple. A lot of you wrote simple, and maybe it was simple kind of in mentality, but it was not at all simple music. It is very technical in a lot of cases. Of course, we have Mozart, early Beethoven, Haydn, Schubert, Paganini, von Weber. Very very famous composers. Romantic, we start to break out of the classical period. And we're getting bigger, grander orchestras, bigger halls. It can fit more people in. Composers are starting to play with personal and emotional music. They're starting to talk about life, talking about different emotions. They're dealing with beauty. They're dealing with if you look at some of the operas, there's a lot of kind of darker subjects that come up. So they're starting to break out of the classical traditional form, developments of different styles, and kind of more focus on if you study Romantic periods, you'll see that there is more on the emphasis of the kind of what they call a symphonic poem as opposed to a traditional symphony that has the traditional standard movements. You would have something that has maybe 6 or 7 or maybe even more shorter forms. So you see a lot of that. Then we have the modernist. So it's kind of more unconventional, mixed meters, expansion of traditional ensembles, 12-tone or 8-tonal compositions. There is no, not necessarily a tonal center. When you listen to something, it's just kind of a mix of notes, but it doesn't mean that it does not have structure or that it's random. Anton Webern, Arnold Schoenberg, Igor Stravinsky, Bela Bartok, Charles Ives, very prominent composers. And then the postmodern, so there's a lot of focus on dissonance, experimentation, minimalism, use of synthetic or electronic sounds, and I should make this one small, experimentation with new tones and new instruments. So we have Philip Glass, Terry Riley, John Cage, John Adams, not the president, but born 1947, Steve Reich, some of the more prominent composers. So we're going to focus mostly on medieval and Renaissance. We're going to talk about the monophonic and polyphonic. So I kind of defined it already. Monophonic being one single melody does not mean that it's necessarily one player, but that it is one melody, no harmony, no background sounds. Sometimes they do include drums or any rhythm that doesn't really affect the melody. So you'll see that being an option. I'd like to play a video for you.
Texture. Musical texture is the element of music that analyzes musical layers in terms of number and function. The most basic texture is called monophonic.
Oh, mama, I'm in fear for my life from the long arm of the law.
Monophonic texture has only one layer, a melody. With monophony, it doesn't matter how many instruments and/or voices are present, as long as they are all singing or playing the same thing at the same time. It also doesn't matter if the voices or instruments are on the exact same frequency or if they are singing in octaves. An octave is the distance between two musical pitches that sound almost the same, but one is higher and one is lower. It also doesn't matter if drums are present or not. In most cases, drums, the rhythmic layer, are neither melody nor harmony, and therefore are generally not considered when determining texture type.
As you saw in the classical operatic piece, they did have voices as well as strings playing, but they are all playing the same melody, either in octaves or in unison. So that's that. In terms of polyphonic texture, so this is where you have two or more melodies that work together, but they don't. It's not harmonizing. So let me play that video.
What if a piece of music has multiple independent layers happening at the same time, and you're not really sure which one is the melody? This is called polyphony. Polyphony can occur if you have two totally separate melodies occurring simultaneously. polyphonic texture can also occur if you take the same melody but start it at staggered intervals. This is called a round.
Okay, so that's the two different melody types, where you have one melody and one melody only, or you have multiple melodies, so monophonic, one sound, one voice, or polyphonic, multiple voices, multiple melodies. And that's it. To complete this assignment, you do have to take this little quiz. It's only 5 questions. The first 3 are definitions. What is a melody? Which you should know, but we did go over this a little bit ago. So just do your best. Then we have monophonic music, or monophony, and polyphonic music, or polyphony. Then we have a musical example 1 and musical example 2. So do your best, 5 questions, 25 points.